Daryl, are we good to go? Going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Legal and Finance, 12:30, November 27th, 2024. We'll start off with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Evans. Here. Lehman.
Here.
Maher.
Here.
Pettigrew.
Here.
Roseman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next up is the adoption of the agenda. Motion by Roseland, second by Evans. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We're going to go ahead and open general public comment. Any speakers? Didn't have any forms. We're going to go ahead and close that. Go on to consent items 1 through 11. We're going to start this meeting off with item 2 today, a presentation by Jesse Reeb. And we'll go through the directors and their presentations.
Good afternoon. I'm Jesse Reeves, Street Superintendent. I just got a little presentation kind of show you our plowing policy, our snow policy, some of our equipment, and just kind of how we do the process. So our snow policy on sanding and chemical treatment of streets. The initial service of streets during a snow and ice incident will be the application of sand, salt, liquid deicer, or a combination of these products. Streets will be treated in the following order of priority. All arterial and emergency routes along with those streets having steep grades, other hazardous geometry, or major intersections. Collectors, sub-collector streets, and school routes, and then residential streets. Our plowing policy. Snow plowing incidents will be divided into 3 levels of service. The service level will be determined by the Public Works Director or his designee. So we have a level A response, which is approximately 2 to 4 inches in snow depth. This level of plowing is for the arterial emergency routes, streets with steep grades, hazardous geometry, collector streets, major intersections. It may include downtown snow removal. Then we have a level B response. That's our sub-collector streets, high traffic residentials. And when we are in level B, that also includes level A. So we're not just doing level B. When we move to another response, we're also doing the one before it. On a level B, that also may include that we contract out to the private sector to help us with snow removal. And then our level C is greater than 6 inches. That's all remaining streets, so that'd be all the residential. And typically when we have a storm of that magnitude, we do hire contractors to come in. Mainly the downtown area is what they do. So just to give you an idea of some of the equipment that we have 19 full-time sanders, 13 dump trucks that we put sander bodies in, 4 blades, 4 loaders, 2 pickups with brine tanks, 6 pickups with sanders, and 7 skid steers. So every year we go over we call it the winter switchover down at street. So this typically happens 2nd, 3rd week in October. We halt all non-emergency summer activities and we spend 1 full week preparing. What we have to prepare is 60% of the equipment that we use in the winter is also used in summer operations. So them activities are very different. So when we do the switchover, we have to get them ready. And I'll go over some of that later in the slides. So our maintenance crew, our mechanics, there's a 71-point check that they do on every piece of equipment that we use for winter operations. This process, they start about 2 to 3 weeks before we start ours, just because, well, you've seen all the equipment. There's a lot of equipment to have a 71-point check on. I'm not going to go through these, but here's just kind of 3 pages. Here's the 71-point check that they all do. So what the street operations does during the switchover is we're putting sander bodies in, calibrating the sanders and the spinners. We test our pre-wet systems in our trucks. We hook up wings, do inspections, put wings on graders. We have operators running routes. And I'll get into this a little bit later, but we added 2 new snow routes this year just because of the expansion of the city. So our routes have changed, so having them run that so they're familiar with the route. We're making brine and servicing the brine machine, just rechecking equipment, rearranging equipment so we can get our essential winter equipment inside. We don't have the capacity for everything to be inside, so we have to rearrange to get the important stuff inside, so it starts in the mornings. So our snow routes, now, when I go through this, I did this at perfect conditions. Each storm is different. So we have 21 snow routes. I have 31 available drivers, 24 during the day and 7 overnight. Along with those snow routes, when we have school in session, there's 41 individual streets that we have to plow so buses and kids and parents can get to school. We have roughly about 400 mainline miles that we plow during every event, no matter what response, because the main lines are a response A, so them are the first ones we keep open. We have just over 2,000 total lane miles that we have to travel each storm. And our main line and connectors and school routes, we travel 4 to 5 times per event. So the residential areas, if we get into that level C response, residential areas, we normally hit 1 time, and that's normally at the end of the storm. So to have if all 31 drivers were available and we hit every road in town once, at 20 miles per hour, that's no stopping, no other traffic, nothing in our way, we could do the entire city in 3.2 hours. Now you see that we travel most roads 4 to 5 times, so you're looking 14 to 15 hours just to plow the roads in an event. So one of the things we do is our salting operation. So salt is pre-treated. Before we put it in the trucks, we pre-treat it with a 50% beet juice and a 50% Apex solution, which helps it activate quicker and add weight so it sticks to the road once it's spread. And at certain conditions, salt is also sprayed with Apex while we're applying it on the road. It's getting sprayed right out of our spinners. So beet juice, the reason we use that is it contains natural sugars that lowers the freezing point of ice. It allows the salt to work at lower temperatures. The beet juice particles also help the salt stick to the road, reducing the amount of salt that runs into our waterways. Apex is just a liquid de-icing agent. Typically it's a magnesium chloride brine. That's often used as a pre-wetting agent for salt. So it enhances its melting capabilities, especially at lower temperatures. And the salt can be used up until 15 degrees. So another thing we do is sanding. So sand is placed on the road to increase friction and improve road safety by providing temporary traction. Sand, it just works as an abrasive to improve traction. It works best if it's put on snow where it can embed itself, not just on a dry road. And sand can be used at any temperature, so it makes it useful when it's too cold to use chemical de-icers. The sand that we use, we do mix. It's a 6-to-1 ration with salt, just so we maybe can get some of that de-icing depending on the temp. We typically use it on hills, intersections, and then when the temp's below 0. So January, February, when we have that 3-week period of -40, we're typically just using sand. The downside of using sand is that it doesn't melt ice. It only provides traction. So it can be easily blown away by wind or traffic. That's why we don't put it on high-speed roads. Additionally, the excessive sand can clog drains, contribute to environmental issues like sediment buildup in waterways when it washes off. And then when the storm's over, then the sweepers are out sweeping up all the sand. So that's another reason we don't particularly like it. So brine. Brine is a salt water solution of 23.3%. Due to its pre-wetted nature, brine requires significantly less salt to achieve the same de-icing effects as granular salt. Brine is more effective and coats roadways better than plain salt or sand, and it reduces the environmental impact. Brine is used to pre-treat the roads to prevent ice and snow from sticking. And then the brine, it lowers the freezing temperature of water to about 18 degrees. So we get about another 14 degrees of play there. So in 2023, we purchased an actual brine maker, and then this year we got a mixing table. So in years past, we were basically hand mixing in a big tank and having just a tester trying to test the brine. It worked for what we had, but now that with this brine maker, we don't need 4 people in the shop mixing brine. We don't have to buy clean salt, so that was another thing. To make brine, you gotta use clean salt, which costs $50 more a ton. When we use the brine maker cleans the salt for us before it makes that, so it saves. And in later slides, I'll show you how much salt we use to make brine, but $50 a ton, there's quite a good cost savings there. So every event, we use about 24,000 gallons, and we cover about 300 mainline miles per event. So brine's most effective if they can forecast a storm and we can get out there 2-3 days before, that's when it's the most effective. We don't always have that luxury of them predicting the storm that far ahead, but. And then brine is not very effective once the snow is already on the road. One of the reasons for that is you lay the brine over the snow melts, well then you lose your water solution to 23.3. That freezing temperature starts going back up closer to 32 than the 18 degrees. So downtown snow removal. So ordinance states that the downtown area is the city enclosed within the boundaries of West Boulevard on the west, Fifth on the east, Omaha Street on the north, and Kansas City on the south. That also includes all other roadways in that section. So a snow removal alert is declared by the Public Works Director or the mayor. What that does is when they do that alert, nobody can park downtown between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. to allow us to get down in there and remove the snow. One of the challenges with downtown with all the cars and the tight quarters, we don't really have anywhere to put the snow, so we have to haul it off. Snow will be removed curb to curb, and one thing we're gonna try this year is we are gonna plow all the snow to the middle lane, and then we do have snow blowers that attach to our loaders. We will just go in, pick it up, haul it off to the snow bowl there by Taco John's on the east side and store it there. And then when a snow alert is not declared, we are still chemically and mechanically treating downtown. Like I said, it's just difficult with all them cars. Nowhere to put the snow. We don't want to block people in. We don't want to be spraying people's cars with salt water. So here at the end, I just got some factoids for you. So Rapid City's snowfall average is 56.7 inches per year. We put down roughly 240,000 gallons of brine. That's about 2.4 million pounds. It takes 600,000 pounds of salt to make all that brine every year. And that's what I was saying about getting that brine maker, cutting $50 a ton off the salt. There's a good savings there. Just salting operations, we use about 5,000 ton, which is 10 million pounds we put back on the road. And we use about 700 tons of sand, which is 1.4 million pounds. And like I said, when we put sand down, we have to go sweep that up. In the last 8 years, we have decreased salt usage by using brine, and mechanically we've decreased the salt usage by 2/3 over the last 8 years. So 2016, I think we used roughly over 14,000 tons of salt, and last year we used 5,000 tons. So quite a bit of a cut there. And that's all I got. Any questions?
Mr. Evans has a question, Mr. Reed.
Okay.
Bill, go ahead.
Is there I see that the snow policies are listed online, but is there a place where people can see where their street is prioritized? Because I'll tell you, the first thing that happens when it starts snowing is people start complaining to us about why isn't their street plowed? I said, well, we don't have enough snow, you know. Well, why don't we have more snow plows? I said, well, we'd buy some if you'd be willing to come and testify that you're willing to let us increase your taxes by $500 a year. I mean, and so you explain it just costs money to be prepared for everything. But is there a list that they could check to see where their street is if they wanted to appeal its priority or something?
Yeah, so one thing we're gonna do this year, and I've been working with Daryl, is so all of those level A, B, and C responses, we've been working with our GIS department to break them down into maps. So when we have a snow event, we're gonna put out, we are in a level A response and a map with all the roads that, these are the ones we're currently plowing. Please find out where you live and try to get to one of these to take this route. And then when we go into a level B, we'll put out another map, and that'll be on social media. It'll be on the city webpage under the streets. They can go now and look at all the snow routes and maps, but we don't have the maps on there currently broken out. But that'll be kind of all part of our media push, so everyone knows what roads the snowplows are on.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Maher? If it'll let me bring you in.
Thanks for the presentation. I just have a quick question. You know, Sheridan Lake Road, the plows are staggered to do all 2 lanes at once. Is that the city or the state doing that?
So Sheridan Lake Road, that would be us out until Red Rocks.
Okay.
So we stagger them, it's called team plowing. We do it on St. Pat, Omaha too, just to clear the whole road at once.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. No one else is in queue.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Ainsley, was there any items you wanted to highlight on the agenda today? I comfortable with moving on. Mr. Long, would you like to go over your item today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, we're just here for some more of those write-offs, about $514,000. Still cleaning up our books.
Thank you. And nobody's here from Human Resources, I don't believe.
If you have any questions, I can cover that.
Okay. So that consent items 1 through 11. Would my colleagues like to pull any items for discussion or questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Motion to approve by Roseland, second by Maher. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Non-consent items 12 and 13, going to open and close public comment. Item 12, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6641, an ordinance to amend chapter 8.24 of the Rapid City Municipal Code to adopt the 2024 International Fire Code. Would entertain a motion to approve or not? Motion to approve by Maher. Second by Roseland. All in favor? Any opposed? Item 13, provide direction regarding the moratorium on the acceptance of applications for the new cannabis dispensary licenses. Go ahead and open the floor for discussion or direction. Mr. Maher?
Well, I just think, since recreational marijuana lost in the November election, there's no reason to to offer or to issue those 5 licenses. We have 10 dispensaries soon to be opened. There's only 13,000 medical marijuana cards in the entire state. Sioux Falls only has 5 dispensaries. I just don't think we need to jump to 15 unless recreational gets approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maher. Somebody like to make a motion on the item? Mr. Landine, can you go through the options? They didn't read the agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We can't, I'm not saying that we can't keep the moratorium for a little longer, but really the moratorium was approved prior to the vote. Now that we know kind of what we're going to know. We're not really going to know more the longer we wait. We can't just leave the moratorium in place forever. So at some point, you're going to have to make a decision. Do we issue those licenses, or you could direct that the staff bring forward an ordinance amendment consistent with Alderman Maher's statement that he does not believe we should issue it. The council could reduce it from 15 to the 10 outstanding, or you could reduce it to really any number you choose. Some licenses likely then would become legal non-conforming or would exist because they've been issued, or you could do something between 10 or 15. Another option that I've heard discussed would be that you authorize the issuance of the 15, but then make a public statement that, if any of the licenses are not active within the year that they have to get operational, then you would consider removing those licenses or reducing the number of licenses. So essentially issue the 5 outstanding, give anybody who gets one of those licenses a year to get operational, and then a year from now assess, after all the licensees have had an opportunity to get their businesses up and running, assess whether or not you want to reduce the number of licenses at that point. But say so now so everybody is well aware, and it doesn't, I think the terminology I've heard used is it doesn't feel like you're changing the game in the middle, that you've kind of given everyone fair warning. Another option, in fairness, if you want to discuss it today, certainly that's what the committee meeting is for, but I think we all know that this is a item that's probably going to take a full council discussion. So another option you have would be to take it to council without recommendation. But at some point, I'm going to need some guidance on how we're going to resolve the questions that were the result of the moratorium. So,
Thank you, Mr. Landine. Mr. Evans?
Well, I'm going to continue to be consistent on this, as I have been since the very inception. We should follow the ordinance that was passed that I didn't particularly like in the first place, but you passed it, live with it, follow what you've said, and don't double back and try and change the game, changing oars in the middle of the stream, as we say on the ranch. Right, Miss Vicki? All right, thank you.
Mr. Evans, I'd let you chime back in to make that a motion if you'd like.
I'll move to keep the ordinance as written, let the moratorium expire, and let what we passed a couple years ago play out, see how it goes. If we don't like it, we can change it in the future.
Seconded by Mr. Mr. Rosen. Mr. Pettiger, did you want to jump in? All right, so Mr. Evans made the motion to lift the moratorium and leave the ordinance as is. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. And 1 no for Mr. Maher. The motion passes. Finance Office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note that there is an additional item on the 2 items. If we can,
Yes, Ms. Fisher, please.
So the agenda that's online is the correct agenda. We have 2 items from community development that are not included on the paper copies on the dais. In both of those instances, these are time sensitive. So if I might,
If you could read them in, Ms. Fisher, I think we
Thank
could
you.
vote on them. I don't have a copy of them.
Our first item under community development is 24 TI-005, approve resolution number 2024-075, a resolution for amendment number 1 to project plan for TID number 83 project plan for the Homestead Street extension for property generally described as being located Homestead Street east of Eltville Road between Timmins Boulevard and Missoula Street. And if I may, this item is on your agenda again. It was on your last Legal and Finance Committee agenda, and you did vote to send it forward to council with a recommendation to approve. However, based on state notification requirements, we were just a little premature in taking it to Legal and Finance Committee. So we're bringing it back before you today for the same approval. And remember, with this amendment, it does allow money to be secured within the allotment increase so that the city can own 2 lots for the purpose of expanding a park and another lot that will be constructed with a fire station, which may also include a smaller police precinct. And then there's some drainage improvements that would be owned by the city as well. This is one of those amendments that will greatly assist the city while being covered under the TIF. So again, we are asking for your approval on this one.
Motion by Evans, second by Maher, and Mr. Evans has the floor.
This is a case again where the district is overperforming where it was. Everybody's happy with how the current one is working, and this is an extension that hits so many birds with one rock. It's kind of amazing. It gives us parks, it gives us a fire station, it gives us recreational space. It combines unusable space and drainage areas and everything, makes them more usable for a parkland and everything. I think it's a great thing. We should pass it right away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Ms. Fisher, if you could read on the second item that I don't have.
Thank you. Our next item is 24OA008, Introduction and First Reading of Ordinance 6644, and Ordinance amending Title 17 to add the definition of a data center and regulation data centers in light industrial districts and heavy industrial districts. As you know, it has been brought to the city's attention that we do have a data center that is interested in coming to Rapid City. We've been working with Elevate for quite some time on creating an ordinance. Currently, the Chapter 17 doesn't have a place for a data center. In reviewing what other communities have done, the design of the structure itself, the type of traffic that would be generated by the use, it truly falls within our light industrial and heavy industrial districts. And looking at what the demands are for this use, they are high in capacity need for both water and electrical demand based on the coolant system that is associated with the data center. We had originally in our preliminary proposal brought this forward as a conditional use. You may recall that there was some pushback from the community on that proposal. We had then amended our request to bring it forward as a permitted use, but with the conditions that upon submittal of a building permit, we do have that feasibility study to show where that water capacity will be met as far as electrical. And reaching out to the two electrical companies and the two water source agencies, knowing that we will get that information, it will have to be validated that it can be met, and the building permit will not be issued until that becomes an issue. If at the time, let's say we get an onslaught of data centers, because it is a huge water push, we would not issue those building permits until such time as we could identify that that water source was not going to impact other needs within the community. When we saw where other communities had it as a permitted use, in those instances where the demand cannot be met, it would require that the applicant seek a variance from the Zoning Board of Adjustment, which is a very strict criteria and very difficult to overcome. More importantly, if there need to be some partnership on cost sharing to make improvements, those projects would come forward through the Public Works Committee and on to City Council, so you truly would have the final say as to whether or not that project should come forward, knowing that it's going to have that demand on the water capacity that we currently have for the community, not just for the needs that are in place today, but there's a lot of vacant properties within these water regions, and we need to be sure that we're always holding in reserve water for other land users to come in with viable projects as well. So with that, we are recommending that this ordinance be approved with the conditions that that feasibility analysis for water and electric be brought forward as a part of a building permit. That building permit will not be approved until such time as those two issues have been addressed.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Any comment, questions, or a motion from my colleagues? Mr. Evans.
Has the developer already completed any such studies of their own that we could access so we don't have to start over?
Mr. Chair?
Of course.
So the one location that we know that a particular developer is interested in putting up a very large data center, Black & Veatch, a consulting firm, is currently working on a feasibility study for that area right now. And so hand in hand with the developer, once that analysis comes forward, that will be at their disposal to use to then see if their demand is going to fit into that feasibility study.
I just want to make a comment that I think because of our location on this cusp of the east and west grids, we're in a pretty prime location for these kind of things, and they provide a gigantic tax base bump when they do go in because they're so expensive to build. And this is the kind of thing that has put us at a loss from Sioux Falls, for instance, when it comes to funding our schools and everything. We don't have a lot of really, really expensive pieces of property that we're taxing. And so, our school budgets suffer because of it. So I think looking forward, this is the great kind of thing we need to start doing. And hopefully all of these water studies that we're planning for the future are going to plan ahead for this kind of thing as well. And I know if we don't jump on this, maybe somebody down the road might that's less capable of even handling it because they're not going to consider all of this stuff. So I think we're the prime spot to do it. I say let's move ahead as quickly as possibly can. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Of course.
in full disclosure, there are those communities that whether they have this use as a permitted use or a conditional use, sometimes there are so many data centers coming into a region or community that the water just isn't there. Because it's huge. It is a huge pull on the water source. In those instances, as if we see that happening, we will be before the city council to request a moratorium so that we can do a more universal and regional analysis before we're in a boat where we have to approve a building permit and we don't have the water to do so.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Motion to approve by Evans. Second by Maher. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Are there any other items I am missing since I have the wrong agenda?
There's one that needs to be read in that wasn't discussed, and I'll defer to the fire department on that. It's the introduction and first reading of ordinance 6641.
I did read that. We did
Oh,
vote on
we-
it, Ms. Fisher.
So if I was paying
That
more
one's on my
attention to
agenda.
what you did, then I think we're good.
All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Roseland, second by Pettigrew to adjourn. All in favor? And we're adjourned. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I